Hi, everybody. This is Spuds and Sports Med. I'm Jake Klassen.
And I'm Libby Masari.
And today we're going to be talking about the preparation phase of periodization and the coronavirus. It's going stealth mode.
No, Nick, delete it, please. Social media is going to destroy me. Good news, everybody. We are now up on multiple platforms. Please subscribe to us and listen to us at YouTube. And for Apple users, you can hear us on Spotify. We also have multiple social media locations. You can find us at Spuds and Sports Med on Instagram and Facebook. If you would like to email us questions after the episode or tell us what you liked and disliked, you can email us at spudsandsportsmed@gmail.com.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd really love to hear from you guys. If you view this on YouTube, you can just leave a comment. But if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple Music or any other platform that we may get onto sooner or later, then send us an email. All right, so talking about questions and emails. So our first question coming from Steve Miller. He asks, any blood doping or known PED, that's performance enhancing drug use over the past 10 to 15 years in swimming we haven't already heard about?
Such a good question.
That's a great question. I am going to preface all answers to this question with, I don't know how much the world knows about anything in the swimming world because, frankly, not a ton of people, and this is coming from a swimmer, not a ton of people care about the swimming world or really know about the swimming world.
It's pretty small.
It's pretty, in reality, in the reality of things, it's big, but it's pretty darn small. Mm-hmm.
Compared to other sports.
Compared to American football, soccer, which is football all over the rest of the world, basketball, baseball, cricket. Australian rules football is probably bigger
lower than cricket.
Oh, yeah. No,
really?
Cricket is huge. You didn't know that? No, cricket's huge.
I believe you.
Cricket, rugby, and soccer, football are like the three biggest sports in the world.
Fair enough.
I'm pretty sure.
Fair
enough. So going back to the question. So any blood doping or prescription or performance enhancing drug cases. So we got a couple. We did a little bit of research. We just thought about our own knowledge of what was going on. So here's what we got so far. So we've got Libby. How do I pronounce this first name?
The first person we have is Chen Xin-Yi, Chinese Olympic athlete.
Okay. Chinese female Chinese swimmer, right?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
so she got caught. She was using, actually, this was really interesting. The more research we do, actually, the more we know about stuff, which is super fun. And this one of the reasons why we started this podcast. But,
yeah.
So she was using a banned blood pressure medication, but it wasn't really the blood pressure medication that was the big deal. It was that athletes had been using this blood pressure medication in the past to cover up other performance-enhancing drugs. So she didn't test positive for performance-enhancing drugs. She tested positive for this blood pressure medication. But they've linked it to performance-enhancing drug use. So they were able to say, because you were taking this, you were most likely taking these other things and using this to cover it up.
Yes.
So wham, they hit her with a 2-year suspension, right?
Yes.
2-year international swimming suspension.
Yes, and
so
then we
really,
have,
really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and then we have some names that maybe
some American names.
American names some people outside of swimming might even recognize. The first person is Jessica Hardy.
Who I'm a huge fan of, by the way.
Yes.
And so
Are you kidding?
I
She's
just
the
heard about
best.
this when we started doing this. So I was a little confused.
I was shocked.
I was like, whoa, no way. But at the same time, she wasn't hit with she wasn't doing steroids. Mm-hmm. She wasn't doing speed, which would, oh my gosh, that would be crazy. But not super hard drugs or anything. But still cheating.
Still cheating. She was taking a bronchodilator to, open up those lung pipes and get more oxygen into her blood right before the race. It is a advantage, no doubt. And she was hit with a 1-year suspension in 2009, but came back in the 2012 Olympics.
Yeah, and did really well.
And won medals.
And that's the other thing is if you're caught cheating and it's not something that's like permanently affecting your body, if it's something that can like go away, like a bronchodilator, right? It's like a
Or the blood
one-time
pressure
use,
medication.
goes back down, right? Blood pressure medication goes back down. There's some forgiveness there. There's obviously you've been cheating, you got to get clean, and you can't be cheating anymore.
Yeah.
But then you can come back. But then there's the case like, I'm just going to throw this name. I'm going to skip one person. I'm going to talk about Su Yang. So Su Yang, Chinese male swimmer, destroyed the 1,500 meter record in the Olympics. One of the greatest, well, what we thought was one of the greatest, and still potentially is. Like, not trying to steal how good of a swimmer. Like, this guy is a phenomenal swimmer, just amazing.
He is.
But
yeah,
he hasn't tested positive for any performance enhancing drugs, but he continues to refuse to take doping tests. He's never taken a doping test, continues to refuse it. So they slapped him with, I knew they slapped him with a little, like a small, like a 1-year suspension or a 6-month suspension before, but now they've hit him with an 8-year suspension because the guy just won't take a test.
8 years. That is arguably maybe an end of a career.
Potentially.
At least an Olympic career.
Yeah.
Crazy. 8 years. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. So it's like, and you got to think about this from his perspective. Like, why would you not take it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say he's 100% cheating, because some people just like, there's reasons, and some people just have their own reasons for things. So I don't want to be like, oh, this guy is a cheater. Good riddance.
Yeah, very suspicious, though.
But it is super suspicious, and that's why you get slaps with this 8-year ban, because they're like, if you're not going to play by the rules, you can't play.
Which is the largest I've ever seen. I've never, in any other sport, I've never seen, I don't even know if I've ever seen over 5 years. So they are taking this seriously, and that was recent. I think that was 2019 or this year.
I think it was 2018.
2018?
Something like that.
Okay.
But still, in the last few years. So then we also got, most people probably know Ryan Lochte.
Yep.
Ryan Lochte, great guy, great swimmer. Little cringy, some of the stuff that he says and does.
Controversial, definitely.
Controversial, for sure. Phenomenal swimmer, though. But he got hit with a 1-year ban, 14-month ban back in
17 or 18.
2017 or 2018. He got hit with a 14-month ban. He's back now, but he was doing blood transfusions. He was caught doing multiple blood transfusions at meets for performance-enhancing reasons.
So not a
So they
drug,
hit him with,
and I know
but blood doping.
But blood doping, which still counts.
Yep.
Still counts.
And then, of course, just to finish up, we've got, like, not individual athletes, but Russia's been hit with multiple blood doping and performance-enhancing drug issues. China, just going through the list, it looks like China, Russia are, like, two of the biggest. I'm sure that the U.S. athletes are, I'm sure that there are plenty of U.S. athletes that are doing this. But in general, it looks like,
At least for swimming,
the U.S. is pretty darn clean, other than a couple.
other than a couple.
But Russia and China are definitely have the most cases, those two. Yeah. From what we've seen. That's not a fact. Can't say that's a fact, but that's what we've seen.
From the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so moving on. That was our thank you for that question, by the way.
Yes,
and hopefully we'll get
questions.
We hope to get more questions in the future. This is like what makes the podcast fun and what helps us learn more. If the listeners want to know about something, want us to cover something as a topic or just answer a question, let us know. That's what makes it fun. We want to hear back from you. We want to hear the good and the bad. So let us know. So getting on to the first main topic of the day, we got the preparation phase of periodization. So your preparation phase of training.
Yeah.
So huge, very important thing. So what is it?
What is it, Jake? Tell us.
Most of this stuff is going to come, most of my, I guess scientific data or my scientific findings are going to come from the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So the NSCA. So what is the preparation phase? So that preparation phase, as I understand it, is for most sports, and I'd say most team sports and most game sports, is the preseason phase. That's the easiest way to describe it. So preparation phase is you're building up your overall fitness so that during your competition phase, during the season, I'd say, you're not getting injured, you're able to perform at your best, and you have that strong base.
Yeah, the foundation for your training and
Right.
what to build on top of before the real season hits.
Yeah. And then once you get into the season, you're going into like sport or event specific training. So that's how it looks for team sports, I guess. When it gets into individual sport, when it gets into racing, swimming, cross country, long distance running, Nordic skiing, stuff like that, all that different stuff, it looks totally different, right?
Totally different.
I honestly don't know in swimming how long we're in preparation phase and how long we're in competition phase. Because obviously we're in preparation phase. So let me clarify really quick. So preparation phase is usually characterized by you're building your base fitness. It's usually high volume, low intensity. So in running, that's lots of miles at a slower speed. In swimming, that's
Same thing.
More
yards, slower speed.
In swimming, that's more yards or meters, depending on how you're counting. Slower speed. And longer distances in general. Instead of doing like sprint sets, instead of doing shorter distances at fast, you're doing a mile or a bunch of 500s or a bunch of 200s at a slower speed or a slower heart rate. Super interesting, actually. Katie Ledecky does a ton of heart rate training.
Legend.
Right? She's amazing. She's just phenomenal. From what I know about her, great person, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
I don't know her personally, but from what I've read about her and what I've heard about her, seems like a stand-up gal.
Yeah.
Right? So she does heart rate training. So when she's in her preparation phase of training, she keeps her heart rate pretty darn low. It's at like 70%, I think. You can fact check me on this. I don't know for sure. But I think it's around like 70%. So she does tons of long swimming at like 70% of her maximal heart rate. And she just does tons. And then as the season progresses, as she goes into her competition phase, she brings that up. So she goes up to 80 and 90%. And then obviously you're competing at 100% of your max heart rate. And those all percentages were based off her max heart rate according to a test set that she does, which is a bunch of 200s. I don't know how many. It's like 7 to 11 200s.
Probably a lot.
It's crazy.
Because she's a multi-mile swimmer.
But yeah, that's what preparation phase looks like. So for me, I don't know. When it comes to team sports, I guess preparation phase would be like in football or basketball or stuff like that. You're getting like your plays to like you're building your overall fitness and you're starting to learn like generally how your team works together. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not super good on the team sports side of things.
I know
I played them, but I didn't do a lot. It was like as a little kid. So there's really no preparation phase as a little kid. It's just like show up, learn how to dribble a ball or throw a football or catch a football, then play.
Yeah. I think Jake, as you know, and maybe for our listeners too, I'm a pretty big college football fan. Me and my family are really, really passionate about college football. And I know that, spring training, summer training, is so important to build that conditioning. And I think that's what you can really see when you get into the season is, there's strategy and there's plays. But when you take Alabama, the top strength and conditioning coaches work there with these athletes. You can tell that they
all these schools,
they sub less and they have their first string out there for many more minutes because these guys can perform at their best for 90 plus minutes because that's what they did all spring and summer.
Yeah, and I think
built that endurance.
I think overall sports, the athletes that perform the best at the end of the season, and this is like a coachism, right? Like
from Coach
the athletes that, well, this is just like from like coaches in general. Like you always hear coaches with their coachisms are like, athletes that find success at the end have like put in the work at the beginning, or whatever. Right. And it sounds super cheesy. And in my mind, a lot of the times it's just like kind of boring and dumb, but it's true. The athletes that have the most success at the end, usually 99% of the time have put in a ton of work in the preseason or in the preparation phase. Preseason for team sports, preparation phase, which is same thing for individual sports. For swimmers, you built up that base. For runners, even sprinters, even those guys, like they're only running 100 meters to 200 meters or 400 meters, right?
Yeah.
The 800 meters is a sprint too. And the mile is pretty much a sprint nowadays. But like the 1, 2, and 400 meter races, even those guys have to have a good cardio base. The better your cardio base is, the better your body's just able to function overall. And so the faster you can go, right?
Yeah.
If you have extra fat hanging on you, you can't run as fast. If like you don't need a ton of oxygen for a sprint. So you don't like, people are like, oh, my cardiovascular health doesn't have to be that good to sprint, right? But you have to have good cardiovascular health to recover from a workout. And the better you can recover from a workout, the better you can perform in general, right?
Very true.
So
very true. I mean,
arguments
I think,
there.
Yeah, I think that kind of hits home for me a little bit. I mean, as you know, that's pretty much all I did. I was pretty much a straight sprinter. I know you kind of dipped your feet
more
in
in
both ends of sprint and distance.
I was a mid-distance swimmer.
Yeah, but I was pretty much, not only did I rarely hit 200 meters, but I never went over that. I strictly am 50s, 100s, sometimes 200s. And I remember feeling a little frustrated and hating off-season 8,000 yard workouts when we're all, no matter what event you do, we're all put into the same workout. So that goes back to your theory that no matter if you're a sprinter, mid-distance, or distance, we are all doing 10 200s on the 3 whatever.
Right.
As a group, because we are all trying to build that same foundation no matter what event we're in. And then later we can work on our specialized event. But I remember hating those long distance workouts. But they must have paid off. And, you know, another thing too is when we got into our more specialized event training, you know, as a sprinter, we're doing multiple 100s, but we're doing multiple sets of 100s. So if I didn't have that foundation from our long distance sets, I don't even think I would have made it through that workout to specialize in what I did, which was sprinting.
Yeah. So biggest things to take away from knowing more about a preparation phase in training, you need high volume. The more not necessarily the more the better, but the higher volume and the more fit you can get overall in general, the better off your season's going to be, or the better off your competition's going to be. To a point in swimming, sometimes you don't have to go all the way back up to like your preseason volume between meets, but you got to go back up. As you compete, and then you got to bring your volume back up and your intensity back down.
Yeah.
When you go back into that preparation phase. And I'd say the other big thing for me during your preparation phase, you always need to have good core strength and core stability, but like the preparation phase of training, the preseason time or right after a meet as you're building back up to another meet in swimming or running, that's the time to build that core strength, because core strength is so incredibly important and affects every other part of your racing
and technique,
of your game, you know, all of it.
Yeah.
Anywho.
For sure. For our next topic, I think me and Jake decided that it was appropriate to talk about everything the world's going through right now with coronavirus.
Yeah, so Professor Frobisher at the College of Idaho, he's retiring at the end of this semester. Huge thank you to Professor Frobisher. He's been a mentor to me and just like a super awesome professor in general. I've got a lot of really good professors. Professor Frobisher is really, really good. But he did a quick lecture on the coronavirus, just as like a fun fact type of thing. Students wanted to know, so he decided to talk about it. And then he actually, we were doing this, we're online right now, and he says, actually, Jake, do you want to do a podcast about this? And I was like, sure. I'll throw something together, right? I'll do some research. So personally, with the coronavirus, I don't do well when it comes to negativity, right? And so I've just tried to the coronavirus is definitely a problem. It's definitely an issue. There are people that are suffering and having a hard time. And so I've just tried to say I'll help out in any way I can, but I don't want to hear every day about how bad it is and stuff like that. So I've kind of stayed away from it, right? So going in and researching a little bit more has kind of brought to light some of the myths about coronavirus, but then also has clarified some of the issues that are going on with coronavirus. So first of all, the coronavirus is a zoonotic disease. So it came from an animal first before it.
Yes.
I believe that's the term, zoonotic. So it comes from an animal and it was then transmitted to humans. They're saying it's coming from bats or this other endangered species, which Professor Frobisher talked about, which I forgot the name of, and I'm sure he's going to grill me for that later.
Yeah.
But
Professor Frobisher, comment on our video and tell us
please
what
send
it
us
is.
the name of what other animal species they believe the coronavirus may have originated from. So bats or something else. Some people are saying like dogs and wolves and stuff like that, but the biggest cases come from bats, right? And so transferred to humans, they're thinking around a marketplace in China and then hits China and spreads all over, right? So the biggest issue, I think, for me is that people hear this and then they're like, oh, pandemic, right? And pandemic, the definition of pandemic is a widespread disease over a region or country, right? So people are like, oh, pandemic. I've seen that movie. Everybody's going to die, right? And so it just causes mass panic. Not true. Pandemic is just a disease that travels over a large area, right?
Yes.
Which it's hit the whole world.
Which it has, yes.
Right. So it's a pandemic.
It
right?
qualifies.
It's a pandemic. So yes, it's a pandemic. Yes, it goes all over. No, it is not going to kill everyone that it touches. Okay. It's not the plague. It is bad. There are people suffering. It is bad.
But it's not the plague.
But it's not the plague. Let's
Even
just
though
take.
It might feel like the plague.
It's not the plague. Yeah.
And I think I am really glad you touched on this, Jake, about kind of the panic. And I know we're going to get a little bit more in depth into the psychological, mental situations that this whole situation has brought up. But I think for the majority of people alive right now, they've never dealt with this. I know. I mean, I know my grandparents have told me they've never dealt with this and they're in their 70s. So, we all have history books, and we hear about the bad diseases and how it affected people, but it's so interesting that now we're kind of starting to live it, even though it's not as bad as a Spanish flu or a Black Plague. And, it's crazy that we kind of get to experience, stuff that we've heard about in history.
And that's most likely going to go down in the history books. Why would it not? I'm sure this will.
I'm sure it will.
I'm sure we'll be talking to our kids one day about remember when the whole world shut down? Yeah. Pretty much. Right? The coronavirus specifically, but all viruses, it's a protein protein shell, and then it's got RNA in the middle. Viruses are actually incredibly simple, right? These aren't bacteria. It's a protein shell with RNA, which is not DNA. RNA is not DNA. It's interesting. So RNA is transcribed DNA. So it's a backwards code of DNA with some different stuff in it. So this virus has its own RNA and in this protein casing, and then on the protein casing, there are all these little projections that go out, and that's how it attaches to other cells. And then interestingly, this virus is coated in a fatty lipid coating, which I thought was interesting. And that's why soap, just like regular soap, works so well against it.
Yeah.
Because it's in this soapy casing, and then the soap goes in and destroys this virus.
So when they tell you to wash your hands, they're being serious.
That's why it works.
It's not just for fun. They're washing your hands really is actually breaking down this lipid layer of the actual virus and then killing it or stops it from infiltrating your cells. So there is science behind the words.
So soap works because of that lipid layer. So anywho, so then these projections go, and if the virus gets into your body, it goes and it attaches to a cell with these lipid projections, and then it inserts its RNA into your body. So then into your cells. So then this RNA from the virus that's now inserted into your cell goes to the ribosomes in your cell, and it's going to start pumping out more proteins. It's going to hijack your cell's ribosomes to then start making its own proteins. So then it's going to make proteins for itself, so it can remake its RNA, so it can remake its protein shell, and so then it can travel to more cells in your body. It's also going to make 3 other proteins, which I thought was super interesting. One of those proteins specifically is going to block the specific cell's immune system from attacking that virus. So it's stopping the specific cell. The second protein is going to stop the, it's going to stop that cell from notifying your whole body's immune system. So it's not attacking your immune system. It's just blocking it. It's just, I'm not here. So it's like going into stealth mode, and it's tricking your body into thinking, oh no, this is fine.
Which is why they're saying
Nothing's
it's
going
taking 2 weeks to show symptoms.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And that is one of the things that's making it take 2 weeks to start showing symptoms is because it's going stealth mode. Exactly. It's blocking your body. It's like, oh, we're not here. So then your body can't kick in the fever. It can't make you start coughing, different things.
If you don't have an immune response, you don't have symptoms.
Usually absolutely. So anywho, and then the third protein is going to just cause that cell to open up and allow the virus to break out. And that's usually going to kill that cell because it's going to have to break open its membrane. That's going to release the virus into the body, and it's going to kill that cell. So so that's how the virus multiplies, I guess, reproduces itself. So how does it harm your body? Well, your body is being harmed by its own immune response because it's kicking up your temperature with a fever to try and kill this virus. But for a lot of individuals, they can't handle that. Their body can't control it. Their fever goes too high, and it ends up damaging, mutating the proteins that are in their cells, and they have a really bad response. And we're talking about
severe.
Yeah, the severe cases. So in the severe cases, their proteins in their body are being denatured by this fever. However, it is a respiratory disease. So many individuals that are dying because of fever or because their lungs are shutting down because the virus has infected all the cells, not all, but a majority of the cells in their lungs, and they have respiratory failure. So those are the two cases that we have of people dying. Those are the two main causes of this causing death. Now, that's only for severe. And the severe cases, according to the CDC, they estimate that only 3 to 15% of all cases ever get to the severe side of things. And those are the people that are dying.
Yes, those are also mostly at-risk people with other comorbidities, such as diabetes, congestive heart failure, COPD, or a previous respiratory disease. Like you said, those people whose bodies cannot handle their own immune response because they are at a disadvantage with either another disease or health issue. Yeah.
If you're eating healthy, if you're getting exercise, and as long as you don't have any pre-existing conditions, you should be fine. It's not a guarantee, but you should be fine. So get sleep. That's the other thing. When I read over this, how to prevent against coronavirus or just diseases in general, you need to get sleep. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm fine. I sleep for 5 to 6 hours every night and I get multiple naps during the day. That doesn't count. You need to get minimum 8 hours of sleep every night to be healthy and to stay healthy and to keep your body at the best condition. Yes, you can function just fine on 6 hours for most adults, but 8 hours is how you're going to have the best health and be able to fight off diseases the best. So get your 8 hours. Don't just eat meat. Don't just eat veggies. Eat a plethora of everything, right? And then get your exercise.
I mean, there is a lot more information coming out on a daily basis. I'm sure it is going to take a year or more for scientists to really crack down on what this is, what we can do to prevent it, vaccine options. So, like me and Jake have prefaced before, we are not medical professionals. We are not health professionals. All this information we just gave you is based on our research and, or stuff like you've learned in class, or from other experts. So, we know that this is a complicated disease with new symptoms popping up every day, but we are just kind of talking about what we know, like the severe cases. And we were asked to touch on it. Knowing that, Jake, I think we should talk about the reactions to this and how it's affected maybe people who, like us, who haven't gotten sick, which we're very grateful for, but what other tools it can take.
Yeah. So for me personally, the coronavirus itself hasn't been a huge issue in my life, and I don't really expect it to. Fingers crossed, I don't expect that it's going to play, the virus itself is going to play a huge role physically on me or any of my family members. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, right? However, the mass panic, mass hysteria, and other issues that the coronavirus has the idea of the coronavirus has played on people have played a huge part in my life. And I read a couple interesting articles about this. Dr. Greg L. I do not know how to pronounce his name. I'm so sorry. I'm going to screw this up. Friccioni from the University of Harvard Medical Center. So he talks about how to deal with the anxiety and stress that this pandemic is causing. And the biggest thing he talks about is how getting angry and getting anxious just causes you problems. So then you're not suffering from coronavirus, but you're suffering from anger and anxiety related stress issues physically in your own body and mentally, right? So he talks about a couple things. Number one, he says, anger and anxiety has devastating effects on mood, society, and our physical health. The coronavirus is dangerous, but anger makes it worse. Control what you can and avoid high stress situations and anger. He says the biggest trap when it comes to being angry or being anxious is saying, this makes me angry or this makes me anxious. He says, you decide when you're going to be anxious. He says, not fully. Obviously, your body's going to have natural reactions to things, but you can decide when you're going to be angry and when you're going to let that affect you, right? So step back, take a breath, do some meditation, get some exercise, and eat healthy, right? He says those are the biggest things to remember when it comes to your own psychological health. Make sure you're eating healthy and getting enough sleep. Make sure you're getting your exercise. And then you need to identify those things that are triggers for you and make you angry or anxious. And when you identify those things, catch it ahead of time. So if you can avoid it, don't go to places that are going to make you anxious or angry. And if you do, catch it ahead of time. Take a couple deep breaths, think about the things you can control, and really focus on overcoming your own little anxiety and anger issues, right? Yeah. And if we can do that, the general population, if we can do that, and the people not dealing with the actual coronavirus, if we can do that, we can make it easier on the people that have to deal with the coronavirus, and we can make it easier on society in general and on ourselves. We can bring a whole lot of issues down to a low murmur rather than a scream. Yeah,
I love that you just said that about making it easier on the people who this is actually affecting or who have lost loved ones or people close to them who are dealing with this. I love that you said that because this has affected everybody one way or another, whether you're stuck in your house or you cannot no longer go to work or are facing financial difficulty. This has all affected someone in one way, shape, or form, even if it's just not seeing your friends every day. Everyone's feeling it. Everyone's lives have changed. But if you can figure out a way to control yourself and deal with your anxiety and your irritation through this whole thing, because we're all irritated by it. No question. You can feel it everywhere you go. I've actually noticed the past couple weeks at work. For those of you who don't know, I work in an orthopedic clinic, and there has been more than average. Our patients are mentioning I'm feeling anxious through my injury recovery, which comes with its own set of emotions, but more than usual, people are feeling oversensitive, anxious, angry, like Jake said, frustrated. It seems like it's popping up more and more, and everyone can relate, everyone can feel it. But if we can take responsibility for our own emotions and not rile others up or cause mass hysteria over not being able to go outside, then you really are providing support, even if you don't know it, for people who are suffering and their loved ones are suffering going through this.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode 2. Just tip of the day when it comes to coronavirus, practice a little control on your mental health. Calm down however you have to and think about those things. Yeah. Tip for preparation phase, get that high volume in, get that core strength in. It's going to help your season. It's going to help your performance overall.
Yeah. And join us next week where we are going to be talking about weight training versus body weight training and platelet-rich plasma injections.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. But we'll learn more about it next week. And until next time, Spuds out.